warrior.
That's how hopefully I'm not
Whenever you'd like.
Good afternoon. Hope everybody's doing good. It's a good start to the day this morning, and welcome to Hiring the Next Generation workshop. Before we get started, we have some trivia questions that I want to go over here, and we have three questions, three prizes. If you get the answer right, you can go over to the registration desk and pick up your prize. So, get started with. First question is, name the first national wildlife refuge with the word fish in its name. That's correct. So, come on. Let's ask the judges. Good, okay. You got it. Okay. Question number 2. Jurassic Park was filmed on what national wildlife refuge? What's? That's, no. Anybody else? Is it, I'm going to probably murder this. Hakalawa? Okay. Question 3. What national wildlife refuge in Utah had a Pony Express station from 1860 to 1861? No. That's correct. You can pick up your cards a little later so you can pick up your gift. Again, welcome. This is the Hiring the Next Generation workshop. If you were intending to go to another one, you got time to leave right now. I'd like to introduce the moderator for this workshop, Jay Slack. Jay Slack became the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's National Conservation Training Center on September 22nd, 2008. Jay received a BS in biology in 1986 and a Master of Science in Ecology in 1988, both from Illinois State University, where he did academic research in herpetology centered on the speciation of rare frogs in the United States. Slack joined the Fish and Wildlife Service in 1991 as a herpetologist at the Phoenix Ecological Services Office. In 1993, he moved to the Fish and Wildlife Service headquarters office in Washington, D.C., when he became chief of its endangered species listing program. He went on to supervise its Vero Beach Ecological Services office for 9 years, and in 2006 became the deputy regional director for the service's Mountain Prairie region in Lakewood, Colorado. Slack earned the U.S. Department of Interior's Meritorious Service Award in 2005. Please help me welcome Jay Slack.
Thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everybody. I see we've got a really full house, and that's the first thing I'd like to recognize with the panel is it's good to see that everybody's here. It is an important topic, and a full room is indicative, I think, of opportunity that we have, and we want to be able to talk about that opportunity today. We've got a great panel. I'm gonna introduce bios. I'll tell you a little bit of how we'll run the panel, but most importantly, what we want to do is after we kind of set the stage and talk about this issue, we want to hear from you. So we're going to, kind of work our way through to a conversation. We've got some questions that are going to maybe provoke some conversation out there, but please, as you're going through this, write those questions down that you have. We want to most importantly enter into this dialogue. We'd like to use this conversation just like the workshops that have been going on and that will be going on over the next couple of days to help form the vision. So this is being taped. When we get done, we'll have everybody that has questions hopefully be able to pass a mic. And when you do have a question, if you would state your name and where you're from, that'll help us get it into the record, because when we show this out to the rest of the service that isn't fortunate enough to be here, we'll be able to have at least a record of who's asking questions in case they want to talk to you further about those sorts of things. So keep that in mind. What I would like to do is, before I introduce our panel, give a little background of what we are trying to do and give a little insight to where we are and where we think we might be able to head as an agency and where we might be able to head as a refuge system. And we're going to be hearing from our last panelist, Kevin Kilcullen, and I think he's going to be able to really help set the stage for the specifics in the refuge system that we'd like to talk about. So let me start by just saying, everyone recognizes what's happened over the last few years with our agency. We've made a lot of strides forward in the hiring that we've done. We're doing a much better job at mirroring, our constituency or society out there in the United States. But as we've heard in this conference this morning, and as we're hearing, and we know that we need to do a lot better job of this. That's why this needs to be an important part of the vision. That's why you need to be part of the process to help us move forward. So with that, I think it's important for us to just kind of reflect on the opportunity that we have right now. An important thing is the refuge system right now is taking a very close look at what they want to be for the next 100 years, the next 10 years, or the next 15 years at hand, but then the next 100 years. And part of it, time and time again, the recommendations that we're seeing coming out of the draft vision document are pointing towards the workforce being probably, if not the most important aspect of the refuge system, the most important aspect of the Fish and Wildlife Service that we have. Our workforce is the way we get the job done. Our workforce is the passion behind our agency, and how we form that workforce into the future is going to set the stage for how we carry out the vision that we have. We can have, all the visions in the world about where we want the system to head, but if we don't have the people reflecting that vision and the people behind where that vision is going, we'll never get there. And so this piece is integral to making that happen. Some of the statistics, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but we all know our agency is pretty top-heavy when you look at the age structure. I think maybe 13% of the people that are in the Fish and Wildlife Service right now are nearing retirement age or nearing retirement age. And if you look at the number, actually I did have the statistics here, only 6.3% of our workforce right now is below the age 30. So 6.3% below the age 30. That tells us that we've got a little bit of work to do, and that most importantly, we've also got some opportunity. As this, and I'll read it here, the 13% that are currently eligible for retirement cycle out of the workforce, this is where this opportunity, this engine is going to help us make sure that as we're bringing in the right people to the workforce, they are actually the right people to help us carry out the vision. It's easy to talk about how we might solve the problem with changing our workforce. I think we also need to keep in mind the fact that as a profession, we might not actually be the most dynamically growing profession when it comes to attracting youth, and we've recognized this as an issue out there. Most of you are probably familiar with Richard Louv and his book where he talks about nature deficit disorder. The youth of today are not necessarily engaged in outdoor activities. They don't necessarily perhaps have the same values that we have, not because they're not interested, but maybe because they've been exposed in a different way. And so maybe we as an agency need to think about one of two things: exposing them in a way that would make them appreciative of the refuge system and what we have to offer, or maybe engage them in a manner that, through our refuge system, in a manner that they are comfortable with. If we don't think about doing this in the future, I think our relevancy will drop off. So again, that's how we tie into the vision, but the youth, this whole concept of youth disengagement or lack of engagement is something that I think we need to work on as a base to help us, fuel that engine that will be coming in, fuel that cadre of folks that would be coming in and be interested in a career. So it's not just as simple as going out and recruiting in the colleges. It's not just as simple as making contacts in the community at the high school level. It's got to go deeper than that, and it's got to be a societal change in the way they understand nature and the things that we do as an organization. My guess is if you went out and you talk, what do we got, 60 people in here, 70 people in here. If you got 70 people off the street and asked them right now, have you ever been to a National Wildlife Refuge, or do you know about the Fish and Wildlife Service? I bet you there wouldn't be very many hands that go up in the room. Likewise, if you ask them about national parks or what's going on in national parks, I think there'd be a lot more hands that are being raised. And so I think we need to think about the awareness that we have as an organization into the youth of today and get them interested in not just going out and being involved in the outdoors, but get them thinking about, is this a career that I'd like? There's a lot of really neat things that you can do, and if you love your job, it doesn't seem like a job, and we have some of those jobs out there that I think folks would really love if they knew about it. So we're going to talk about that. Let me get started here, and what I would like to do is I'd like to introduce our panel. They're coming from various perspectives that'll help us think about how we might engage youth and think about how we're going to go back in to these workshops and help the vision process after this conversation. So think about this as sort of a preface to help us vision. The first person I'd like to introduce here is Flip Hagood, and his real name is Reginald, but we call him Flip. And Flip is currently Senior Vice President for the Student Conservation Association. He works there on strategic initiatives and business development. He's worked in the federal service for many years previously, National Park Service. He spent a lot of time with the Park Service in numerous positions, including park policeman, park ranger, park manager, training instructor, employee development specialist, and human resources manager. So, a varied career in the Park Service and a long career in the federal government. He currently serves volunteers and advises numerous organizations, including serving on the governing council of the Wilderness Society, vice chair for Institute for Conservation Leadership, ICL. He's a trustee for the National Outdoor Leadership School, a board member of the Association of Partners for Public Lands, and is a graduate of Howard and American universities with degrees in Administration of Justice and Police Science Management. He's married to Anne Catherine Pina and has one son, Mark Dominique, and his current focus in life is to continue to learn and grow while experiencing as many of the world's unique and special places, focusing on their natural, cultural, and recreational dimensions. So Flip Hagood, number one. Jessie Cheek, our very own Fish and Wildlife Service employee. She works in the branch of Human Resources since 1989. And she's worked in all HR disciplines, and she represented the service on the Department of Interior FPPS development and implementation team. That's a good thing.
You get paid.
You get paid, right?
Little humor there. Developed and worked on staffing policy, on the staffing policy group for DOI in the human resources area. She coordinates and develops service-wide staffing policies and procedures, provides guidance to headquarters HR staffs and managers and supervisors, as well as the regional HROs. She works on complex staffing, recruiting issues, and she helps implement initiatives related to HR staffing. She's our representative on the DOI SWAT team that's responsible for implementing hiring reform. Great information that she has in her hands because of that, and she works on many special projects with the Human Capital Officer, Deputy Human Capital Officer, and the Region 9 Human Resources Officer. Jessie's going to talk with us about many of the new aspects in hiring and HR that we might avail ourselves of to help us actually get these things done that we're going to talk about. The next person on our team or on our panel is Lamar Gore. He is serving as the Acting Chief of Diversity and Civil Rights for the Northeast Region, Region 5. That position entails working within the realm of equal employment opportunities, civil rights in the Northeast region, as well as developing a targeted diversity recruitment program with an emphasis on minorities, women, and persons with disability. He began his career in 1991 while in school at Delaware State University, where he was introduced to the service through the Career Awareness Institute, and that's another program we can think about and talk about as a good model for the way we might be able to accomplish these things that we're talking about. During his service career, he's worked for fisheries, migratory birds, and refuges, and prior to working in the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights, Lamar worked in the National Wildlife Refuge System, so he knows about the system, where he was responsible for reviewing and coordinating biological management plans, policy documents, personnel actions, grants, and other agreements. And he's worked in the Region 5 Career Discovery Internship Program, yet another model that we might want to look at and think about, which is a national model for Secretary Salazar's youth and recruitment efforts under the Youth in the Great Outdoors program that all of you have been talking about. And then our last panelist, who I don't have the bio for, but I actually don't need a bio for, it slipped through the cracks, Kevin Kilcullen. He's the chief of the Visitor Services Program in the Washington office. He's worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service for 20 years. He's got a 30-year career in the federal government, Park Service before that, right? And BLM, and is currently, and this is kind of leading into the discussion that we're going to want to have, is currently in the kind of all of the discussions that are going on in the department about how to recruit, how to hire, how are we going to staff up with a vibrant workforce, just like what we're talking about. And so Kevin's really going to be able to bring the insight about what's the secretary talking about, how are these initiatives coming down through the department, and how are they materializing in the refuge system and the rest of the service. So Kevin will help us through that discussion. So with that, let me tee this up and say there's no time like now with the support that we have in the department and the secretary, and with folks like we have sitting out here right now. Rowan Gould is leading the charge as our deputy director. Since you're here, Rowan, I have to say Rowan over the last year and a half has been working this issue like no one I've ever seen. So the support at the high levels is really there. So it is the time to be doing this. So let me start and introduce Flip as our first person.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Good afternoon. I just want you to know that it's a real pleasure and an honor for me to be here representing my organization for this conference, but it's also a pleasure for me personally to be here, because what we're talking about today is me. And it's me in the true essence, in that some 45 years ago almost, I was recruited by the Department of Interior as one of its kind of first diversity ways of initiatives in the late 60s, post-Vietnam, fresh out of the Marine Corps. And I was in one green organization and I went to another one. You know anything about the Marine Corps, the green machine? Went on to the national parks. left the national parks after 32 years, went on to the not-for-profit world with SCA, still in conservation and green. But I've been a part of that wave of trying to address this issue of how we engage, and then also how we do it in a smarter, more intentional approach. The service has made some great strides in this regard, but we haven't reached the top of the mountain yet. We've got some work to do, and if you had looked at that room today, this morning, and seen its face, and saw the lack of diversity and the lack of a youngness there, we've got some work to do. And we can embrace that, and that's the part of this presentation today that I'm here to talk about for my 10 minutes, but also to engage you, hopefully, within a dialogue. I've spent most of my career addressing this topic and being this topic, and so it's a passion for me as I do the work. When I think about it, there's a real irony that exists about this topic. And I want to challenge you right off the bat to put your mind into this notion of thing that, you know, we talk about diversity in the Fish and Wildlife Service a lot. We talk about engagement and partnership a lot, and we just can't walk the talk. The irony is that when we talk about it in terms of species and we talk about it in terms of natural resources, the embracement of it as a model is quite unique, and we're proud of that heritage. At the same time, when we start to look at it from a human resource perspective, sometimes we lose a little bit of the edge. And we have a unique opportunity, I think, today, and certainly with Secretary Salazar's AGO and its emphasis on youth. I went to 10 of those listening sessions. And the essence of those listening sessions in terms of those recommendations that are reflected in that report that relate to what the service needs to do about youth is really challenging us as an organization to embrace this and to model the kinds of expertise that will allow us to be ready for that 21st century in the work that we need to do. And we are going to need that next generation of conservation leadership in order to be effective. One of the keys to that is that we cannot do it by ourselves. The partnership implications of this issue of youth engagement and a more diverse outreach are centered in an understanding that a collaboration, and especially a collaboration with youth-serving NGOs, with educational organizations, with other not-for-profits, with allied groups, is going to be the key for our success. If you would look back on some of the recommendations that you have put together within the service over the years, and especially over the last decade, as it relates to partnership and collaboration, when you challenged yourself almost a decade ago on this topic of enhancing our competency for doing partnership work, we outlined goals and specific things that we would do. I want to see that same emphasis and that same addressment of this issue of how we bring in that next generation in a more intentional modality so that we can be successful and so that we can bring them in with this real sense of purpose and guidance. And then once we get them in, because that's only part of the equation, the other part is the retention and the growing and the cultivation and the nurturing of them into leaderships within the federal service so that they would be one day the stewards that we would want them to be when we hand this off as that generation that you described, Jay, just a few minutes ago. The partnership perspective in this issue is one of the true keys for success in terms of the service's ability to address the issue of how we get that next generation to the table and how we engage them. And it requires a paradigm shift on our part whereby we kind of approach this in a different kind of way. We do the work in a different kind of way because they are different today. When I say they, I mean the ones that we're trying to bring in. Their approach to this world, and I think about my son and I think about my nieces and nephews and the youth that I work with every day, boy, I struggle to kind of meet them in the middle because I don't know them well. Their approach in terms of millennials and certainly their ideas and their way of communicating challenges us as conservation leaders to kind of prioritize the manners in which we will do our partnership-related work. We need to have a focus that would allow us to do the outreach work in their universe and in their world. You've got great examples of that, I think, here as a part of this conference and everything that's the technology and the social media and the communication strategy, and we even were smart enough to bring some youth to the conference. You know, when we talk about the next generation and then don't have the young faces in the audience to truly hear the messages that they bring, tells us that we don't get how to meet them in the middle. But the fact that we were smart enough to have that intentionality in what we have set up tells me that we've done some learning and that we're on the right path and on the right track to make this happen. That partnership that I talk about in terms of the engagement of youth means that they need to be a part of our strategy, they need to be a part of our approach. Having the current youth that we have within the organization and then those youth partners as allies and ambassadors is so key to the success that we would have. At the Student Conservation Association 10 years ago, we had embraced this notion of that next generation. It's in our mission statement, building the next generation of conservation leadership. And we do that with a design that says that we will have intentionality about how we do our outreach, how we work with the educational institutions, our other NGOs and allied partners to bring those models to the table that would be facilitative of engagement, but also experiencing, letting them taste it, letting them touch it, letting them feel it in their world. I'll tell you a quick story about how we used to do this so wrong years ago when I was with the national parks. We had this program where we would get the kids from urban centers and we would take them to parks. We would inoculate them and shoot them up with park philosophy and send them back home and think that they had it, right? We used to call it hoods in the woods. And we thought we had the answer. It was the biggest mistake that we made by not bridging them, not building them, not cultivating them, not growing them to a point of relevancy. This needs to be relevant to them. The service needs to be relevant. And so as a partnership key, this issue of relevancy is the cornerstone that you need to have to build the kind of collaborations that will lead to success in engaging our youth. The partnership element within this process, as we talk about policies, as we talk about tactical approaches, as we talk about the future, is going to be that kind of make it or break it piece to the puzzle that will have this be something that will lead to success. It's important that we recognize that we're kind of not in this boat alone. Actually, the service in terms of most conservation organizations is ahead of the curve. I work in other NGOs who are in the conservation arena, and when I look at their organizations, their boards, the way they're set up, how they're engaging youth, they are failing miserably. Look at our friends groups. Look at our nature of the other allied groups that we work with. So this is a collective call that we all need to own, that we need to stand tall. This is a leadership element. When Greg this morning talked about what we need to be doing as leaders, we need to own this one. We need to own it in such a way that it becomes mantra to us, that every day that we're kind of out there, we're taking one along. We're building the next one. We're imprinting. We're providing opportunity. We're cultivating. We cannot miss this opportunity in time because it will be the maker or breaker. Let me close with this notion. Our failure to do this one and to do it right will be the key to the existence of the service and the system in this century. If we don't do the outreach right, if we don't engage them smartly, and if we don't set them up for success to be the next conservation leadership, when it comes time to vote and to have that next generation of green conservation leadership, they will not be there to vote for us and what we so believe in today in terms of the value of the service and the system. And we need them. They're our allies of the future. So let's take this one on, let's own it, and let's be ready to go to work about it. Thank you.
Okay, next we'll hear from Jessie Cheek, and she'll be telling us about hiring initiatives and other opportunities available for for us for hiring and engaging you. Thanks, Jessie.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm proud to be an employee of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I love it here. I love working with the managers, the employees, and everyone. Before I get started talking about our different policies and hiring authorities, I want to talk about two initiatives. I think this is very relevant to the Vision Conference. One initiative is the President's hiring reform. I know most of the managers here, they know about it. We worked on implementation starting last year at the departmental level, and we had to implement certain aspects of it in November 2010. So what the President, the hiring reform initiative, what we were directed to do, all federal agencies, were to improve the hiring process. The federal OPM had us to map out our hiring process in 2009, and they found out that agencies were taking too long to hire. So they have asked us to improve our hiring process. We are to improve the speed in which we hire and the quality in which we hire. Our other action that we had to implement was to streamline vacancy announcements. And I know, as well as current federal employees and the public, I know those vacancies were atrocious because I have seen them. They ran 12 and 16 pages. There were duplicate information in them. They didn't make sense. The instructions would be repeated. So now we have to streamline our vacancies to 5 pages. We have to write them in plain language. One of the other actions we were required to do under hiring reform was to eliminate the requirement for applicants to respond to narratives. I see someone smiling. I think everyone likes that. There was a lot of complaints, even for entry-level positions. If there were 20 questions, then the selecting official wanted the applicant to provide 20 narratives. So OPM said no more. So that's been eliminated. If you see any vacancies out there that's requesting narratives, just call the HR point of contact on the vacancy announcement and say, the President's initiative said you're supposed to eliminate narratives. Okay, you can do that. One of the other actions that we were required to implement, and I don't know if you're familiar, but if you're not in the federal government, you would see vacancies and they would be titled all sources. And those vacancies were vacancies that the public, individuals who didn't have federal status, could apply for positions. But under the old regulations, the old appointing authority, it was called the Rule of 3. So if federal HR offices advertise a position, all sources, they could only refer the top 3 candidates. Veterans preference applied. OPM eliminated agencies from using Rule of 3. Now they have to use category rating. So that's an alternative rating and ranking process. So HR can refer more than 3 candidates. If they determine that there are 10 or 20 applicants in the best qualified group, they can refer all of those applicants. Veterans preference still applies under category rating. But that was just another way of changing the hiring authority so that selecting officials can have more applicants to select from. Okay. So that's what's happening with hiring reform. We have implemented it in the service. It's being implemented throughout federal government, and that's the hiring process itself. That's just one component. What's being worked on also is workforce planning, recruitment strategy. I mentioned the hiring process, security and suitability, and orientation, but I think that's good for you to know. And then one other thing, agencies are required to respond to applicants on the status of their application. They got a number of complaints from the public and federal employees that they never hear back from agencies once they apply for a position. HR is required now to send applicants the status of their application and the 4 steps of the process. Once they apply, whether they were referred or not, and when the selection has been made, and then the individual that was selected. So that's one initiative. The other initiative is our own Deputy Director, Rowan Gould. His initiative was to hire recruiters for the service to help with targeted recruitment. So we have advertised those vacancy announcements. The recruiters are in place, are going to be in place soon. So we will be working on an action plan and objectives for them. as far as carrying out their responsibility as recruiters. There will be one in each region. They will be working collaboratively with the HR office. They will be working with the managers and supervisors, our partners. They will be out establishing networks, relationships, so that we can, and we're looking to target individuals not only in school and universities, but experienced individuals as well. Did I get that right? Okay. Okay. So those are the two initiatives I want to talk about. I know everyone is interested in knowing what's happening with SCEP and STEP. I know you've heard about the Pathway Program and the Pathways Program and the fact that the federal career intern was revoked. And that was a court decision. The court ruled that the federal career intern violated veterans' preference. So they revoked it. OPM said we can no longer use it. So in that president's order that revoked it, the federal career intern, he also directed OPM to establish a Pathways program. Currently, we still have SCEP and STEP until OPM get the regulations written and implemented. So the service is still hiring SCEP and STEP employees. We still have it. The authority is still the same. There are no changes to it. What the Pathways program will be, this is the proposal from OPM. I was told by the department they're moving kind of cautiously because they don't want it to be challenged like the federal career intern program, because our current SCEP program is in the accepted service. So the accepted service doesn't require you to issue public notice, that is to post a job on OPM USA Jobs so all the public can see. And that's why the federal career intern was challenged, because the veterans were saying, if the agencies don't post it, I don't know about it, so you're violating my veterans' preference. So OPM doesn't want the same challenge under the Pathways program. They do want to keep it in the accepted service. So if it's in the accepted service, that means that you don't have to post a vacancy on OPM USA Jobs. But this is what, some information I pulled down from the website and talking to the DOI on what the new Pathways program would look like. It would be three programs, program paths. We currently have the President's Management Fellows. That will still be rolled up into the Pathways program. We have an intern program. It will be similar to our SCEP program. So it will still be students that are currently in college. And then the third program would be recent graduates. And this would be individuals who have graduated within 2 years. This program is going to be designed more as a cohorts program where there will be an opening and closing period for applicants. And then OPM plans to hire the individuals and have them start at the same time. So that's all the information we have right now. We don't know if OPM is going to let each agency post their own vacancy announcements for this intern program, or if OPM will be handling the announcements, or if it would be done at the agency level, that's at the department level. Okay. OPM has written the regulations on the Pathways program. It's been sent out for comment, but only to the head of federal agencies. We were told that it's not going out for public comment. They are hoping to have some implementing regulations within the next year or so. We are thinking, we don't have any information yet, but we're thinking since they're keeping an intern program that's similar to our SCEP program, that our current SCEPs that we hire and we continue to hire, that they would just be grandfathered in, because we still have that component of the SCEP program that's in the intern program. Okay. We still have our current hiring authorities. I mentioned where we can hire individuals who don't have status, where we advertise the vacancy, all sources. We can use that hiring authority to hire at any grade level and for any position. We have merit promotion, where we can hire within the federal government or individuals who have reinstatement eligibility. And we can also bring in under merit promotion veterans who have non-competitive hiring authority, persons with disabilities who have that's a non-competitive hiring authority as well. Okay. So that's it. So I will just wait for your questions, okay?
Thanks, Jessie. Okay, we're going to hear from Lamar. Lamar, come on up. And I know there's a bunch of people standing in the back. If you're uncomfortable, we got a ways to go. There's some seats up front. Buzz up here and have a seat. And let's hear from Lamar. He's going to talk about some on-the-ground programs that he's been working on in Region 5 and along with some of the other regions and how it may expand into actually westward into other regions. So, Lamar?
Good afternoon. I want to echo back on something that Flip said earlier about our failure in doing diversity recruitment could be, to try to use your words, if I wrote your words down properly, the demise of the service. Now, interestingly, I came in as a biologist, and I probably would have called myself a very hardcore biologist when I came into the service, meaning my philosophy was you buy up the land and you shut it down, and that's how you conserve wildlife. How wrong that was. Well, I echo back to his statement, because the longer I'm in the service, the more I begin to realize, every year it changes, the more I realize and how important it is at outreaching to our constituency, especially with the changes in demographics that we're seeing today. Our minority populations are increasing significantly, and we don't do a good job in the service at outreaching to those demographics in the country, throughout the country, either in some of our EE programs, our interpretive programs, or our recruitment programs. So I've been working in doing diversity recruitment in Region 5 probably for the last 3 years, maybe 4 years. It's been a collateral duty, but it has slowly encroached, at least in my heart. The passion for it has been encroaching and pulling me more and more away from biology. As I look at how we have done recruitment throughout the service, well, I'll say in Region 5 because I know Region 5 more specifically, we tend to hire who we know. We hire who we're familiar with. We hire known commodities. We work with our known commodities. And our known commodities are not generally our diverse populations. Our refuges are typically in the outskirts of the cities or way outside the cities. So we're trying to put together concerted efforts to do a lot more targeted recruitment. Some of the things that we're doing now, Flip mentioned earlier, is using our partners to do the recruitment, to do some of the recruitment. We can tell our partners what we need to happen. Our partners can go out, get the students we're looking for, go after the populations we want, bring them in, handle a lot of the logistics, and then we train them up. And we get 2 things out of that, probably 3 things out of that. One, you introduce these diverse groups to what we're doing in conservation, and we share our passions. We also give our field folks the opportunity of working with some more diverse groups, and they get out and do that sort of recruitment on their own. Some of the, one of the other items that we're starting to build more into our program, it's going to increase within the next couple of years or so, is recruiting directly with the schools. We used to have co-op units, cooperative education units embedded in the colleges, and we lost that. And I think when we lost that, we lost one of those connections. And not just a regular connection with the school, but a working relationship with the school, where we have Fish and Wildlife folks on the ground at the school, and they know these students, they build relationships with these students, and they can feed them right into Fish and Wildlife Service. Now, the Forest Service is way ahead of us on that, because they still have a leg in the schools. One other piece to some of the hiring tips for us is we need to figure out how to expand what we're doing in elementary and middle schools, because those are the feeder groups for where we're hiring from. We're hiring at the college levels. We're going after the college students. I mean, we do have the YCC programs in the high schools. We don't have very good connections right now, and we're trying to work on those connections. We're trying to build a very visual pathway for students coming from our YCC program straight into the colleges. But that elementary and middle school section is becoming more and more important, because if we make those connections at those levels, then you're going to automatically at some point start to get more students focusing in and honing in on conservation careers, and it'll take us a bit further down the road. Now, one of the programs that we've been running in Region 5 is now called the Career Discovery Internship Program. And that program is designed to do three things: introduce culturally and ethnically diverse students to what we do in conservation, something that they may have never done before. To ultimately bring some of those students to work for the service. And the third thing is to give our project leaders and their staffs the opportunity of working with diverse candidates. And one of the things that makes that some of the things that make that successful for us, let me ask a question first. How many of us in this room is either a mentor to someone or they've served as a mentor to someone that works in the service? Thank you. That's probably one of the most important pieces to, and not just for diverse applicants, diverse employees, but for anyone out there. One of the most important parts to what we do in this program. I think that with diverse applicants, Flip mentioned earlier, retention is probably one of our biggest problems in doing this, is making our folks feel comfortable, making them feel accepted. Our mentors can help with that. I'm going to go through some of the other things that help our program be successful. Building a launching point into bringing these diverse candidates into our program, the CDIP, is you bring them in as a group and you work with them with their mentors, and you basically give them a crash course with what they should expect when we send them out into the field for the course of the summer. And in that training, you're giving them a snapshot of who the service is. We're giving them a couple-hour session on overall awareness, cultural and intergenerational awareness. Flip talked about the intergenerational stuff a little earlier. It is. It's very different. And I'm not that old, but talking with some of these students and sitting in this orientation with some of these students, they approach the workplace very differently than even I approach it. And I'm a lot younger than Flip. So we have the intergenerational awareness and the cultural awareness session. We do a pretty intense evaluations in this program. We look at what the student's experience is. So what has been their experience? They send an evaluation in. What's the evaluation of that student that happens from the manager level, the supervisor level in the field? And also, how is the orientation program preparing them for their experience out in the field? Also a very important evaluation. Going the extra mile. One of the things that I don't think it would have turned me off to the service, but not everybody has the resolve, not everybody has the same resolve in the world. You go out to a field station for your first time where you may not know anyone, you don't know anyone, and you definitely don't see anyone that looks like you, acts like you, has the same culture as you. It can be a very daunting environment. And when I took it was my second job in the service. The first job was in a pretty developed area, but when I took my second job in the service, I went to Northern Vermont. And it was interesting because my parents had a statement. I told them where I wanted to go, and the first thing out of their mouth was, "There's no black people up there." So we got on the internet, we looked up the statistics, and it was like 1% or something. And I said, I still want to go. So, because the passion was there, but you get out there, and if you don't have someone that opens their arms to you, that welcomes you in, prepares a safe landing ground, or a soft landing ground, to where you can feel accepted, you know where to go, you know who to talk to, it can turn a lot of people off. And I think that's a big part of the retention in Fish and Wildlife Service. It would be the same in the Park Service. a lot of the conservation-based fields, because we don't feed the conservation-based fields to our elementary and our middle school students. So going the extra mile is that supervisor, that coworker who reaches out to a student that we pop on the ground in the middle of nowhere and just make sure they know who to go to, where they can go to get their needs met, whether they're accepted in the field. Very important pieces to what we do in the CDIP program. We work with our managers, we work with the mentors out in the field that stay connected with the students all through the summer. We provide the students, we give the students some assignments to do while they're out there. They're not just doing their work on the ground, they're developing projects so that they can sell their experience that they just came out of the field with to the rest of the world. They have a take-home project. I'm going to leave it at that for the CDIP. I'm going to move into something else. Environmental education programs. In Region 5, we're doing an assessment on what we're doing with our EE programs. Number one, what are our EE programs out in the field? How are they designed? Who's the target audience? And I've been talking with our visitor services lead in the regional office about our programs. I can't catalog what we have right now. She can't catalog it either. We have a SCEP student working on that, but she's trying to find out, she's trying to get our refuges to outline the key components of an environmental education program. And one of those things is when you design a program, decide who your target audience is. If you don't know your target audience, who your target audience is, and you don't have the evaluation built into your program, what are you really doing out there? I mean, a lot of times we develop a program and we're doing what we're comfortable with doing, what we've been doing for the last 5 to 10 years, because it's easy, we know what we're gonna do the next year, and we just keep going. But a lot of our refuges that are running EE programs are sitting pretty close to some of the urban areas. And they need to ask those questions. Who the target audience is? How do you reach out to that target audience? Is the reason why we're not reaching out to the target audience is we're not really sure how to relate with the target audience that we're trying to reach? That could be it. I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, that's a possibility. And if that's the case, what training do we need to prepare our folks out in the field to reaching those audiences? We need to find out what the hang-ups are so that we can better serve the public that we're turning into in the future. So that's it.
Thanks, Lamar. Last, we're going to hear from Chief Visitor of Visitor Services, Kevin Kilcullen. And at the end of his presentation, as we're wrapping it up, we're going to put some questions up on the board here for you to be thinking about, and we'll open it up to the panel for a discussion. So Kevin, take it away.
Thank you, Jay, and welcome everyone. It's so easy to go last. 3 great panelists, they're all great remarks, very good insights. What I'm going to do is the great information that the 3 panelists talked about, I'm going to take this back up to the Conserving the Future document and put it in some context. For the last year, over a year, there's tremendous energy and focus on this topic, and not only within the Fish and Wildlife Service, but within the Department of the Interior. This program is a priority of our secretary, and there's a lot of attention and support being given to it. And if any of you have been following the America's Great Outdoors Initiative, there are entire listening sessions around the country just focused on youth topics, youth engagement. 21 listening sessions, thousands of comments, and it's remarkable when you go back and read the reports and the results, some of the feedback that we received for this. What came up common issues were streamline the hiring system, federal hiring system. It's too confusing, it's too frustrating. People give up on it after a while. Clearer pathways for jobs and volunteer opportunities came up quite a bit. And also the idea of a multi-generational volunteer corps and mentoring program, something that Lamar talked about as well. I mean, these are really powerful ideas that we've heard repeatedly over the last year and a half. So if you start to step this down and you look at the Conserving the Future document and the recommendations, this issue addresses a lot of the recommendations and action items in it. But really what we want to try to do is focus on a handful, which I think are really important, and some of the issues that our panelists have brought up previously. And after I give these few remarks, we really want to hear from you, hear your ideas, and we'll pull the questions up on the screen here. Career pathways has come up quite a bit. Jessie talked about it in the terms of context of what OPM is doing, but pathways to me is what one of our colleagues in the department says, it's like the highway, multiple entry points, multiple exit points. We interact with tens of millions of young people every year through our recreation programs, learning, research, hiring. We need to figure out more effective, more coordinated ways to bring them in and construct the programs that we're looking at. We have a lot of things in place, but I'm not sure we have all the pieces in place and they're connected very well yet. Urban areas. Lamar talked about, we have 200 national wildlife refuges that are either within or within 2 miles of urban areas now. 200. It is huge in terms of the audience and sort of the changing demographics. Lamar touched on this. It's a whole different audience. We have to sort of tailor our programs to sort of meet that new challenge. Sharing knowledge and building experience was a theme that I saw in the vision document. And what should we be doing in terms of mentoring? Building career-related skills, communications, to build our workforce and improve the quality of learning and recreation programs over the next 10 to 15 years. Strategic alliances. Flip talked about it. Our relationship with SCA is tremendous. This year we were able to launch a tribal college intern program for 20 interns throughout the country. We could not have done this without SCA's help, their ability to recruit, to help train, to place them. Last year we had 74 partnerships that placed interns on refuges around the country. So the potential is there, but we really need to rely on our partners to be able to fulfill this. And finally, Lamar touched on environmental education. The Conserving the Future document talks about the need to identify an environmental education strategy. Great potential here. We reach and interact with hundreds of thousands of teachers and students every year, much lower age group than our interns are, but I think you're right on the mark, Lamar. We need to figure out who the audience, the types of programs that we need so that we can start influencing individuals, the teachers, at a younger age. So Steve, if you can pull those questions up. Thanks, Jay. Basically, what we want to do now is turn the microphone over to you, and we've put some questions up here. Your comments or your questions don't need to be limited to that, but we thought these were questions that were particularly relevant to why we're here this week, and we would like to sort of hear your thoughts at this point in terms of ideas that you have, or programs, best management practices, case examples, things that we can take advantage of as we continue to build our programs. Thank you.
All right, Joe's got the mic, and just go ahead, and if you would, just state, because we're filming this again, who you are, where you're from, and go for it.
My name is Anne Marie Chapman, and I'm the Youth Employment Coordinator for Region 3. My question has something to do with what's been brought up already, and that is that a lot of our field stations are already doing environmental education on site, have already cultivated relationships with schools. A lot of these students are already interested in natural resources. Some of them are already coming into YCC course. And over the past couple of years, I've been asking for more resources to give high school students that will help bridge them into undergraduate careers and help foster careers with the Fish and Wildlife Service. So, for example, if we have a high school student that's coming out to our refuges regularly, is already interested in careers and approaches us or me for more information on, what school should I go to, what degree should I pursue, how do I get a job with you guys, I have nothing to give that individual. I don't have a brochure. At best, I have half a fact sheet on the YCC program that I could offer them. I think it's really unfortunate that we don't have more to offer those students. The Ecological Society of America has developed materials for students they're working with, I think this is one of the areas that we've really fallen behind on. And it'd be great to leverage our resources at NCTC to develop things like that, or partners, or whatever. But any suggestions would be welcome.
Well, I'll take a quick shot at it in terms of a comment and say that the toolkit that I think you need is one that should be developed in a collaborative method or approach. There are others. It doesn't need to be your toolkit. I think about the work that not-for-profits are doing within the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math programs throughout this country, and the educational resources that are provided through that method that steer and guide students toward those careers. If we were just tapping just that pipeline alone in terms of those, and the ESA model that you described, the Ecological Society of America, is a great resource and a model. It would be one that I would identify to you that would give you the steps that the student would need to have within the process. However, I would hearken back to the each one teach one approach, because I know its impact is much, much greater than a resource tool. And I know sometimes, well, you think that takes a lot of time, there might be too many of them. Well, quite candidly, the number of positions that you have in rotation right now within the service in terms of annualized vacancies is not thousands. Could be hundreds. So we could be feeding that currently. Now, it will grow as that baby boomer generation goes out, but we could easily feed that today in terms of guidance. The other thing that we can't do is oversell the opportunity, because the expectation being built and then not being able to deliver on the opportunity in terms of the vacancy being there, you need to moderate how we will put that information out there until our ability to respond to that honestly with a slot and with a vacancy equals the pipeline that we're creating. But the tools are there, the resources are there, and the partners are there. We need to align strategically, and we need to use other resources beyond the ones that have historically been our own.
Lamar, I see you might have some thoughts on this.
Flip hit some of it. All I was going to say is I would, one, use that as a prime opportunity to talk about the coursework and such. As far as telling them what school to go to, that's another story. But you got a lot of kids there. I mean, I guess the manager or whoever's supervising the youth on station can probably talk to them as a group. These are the types of things you need to pay attention to when you're planning for your future in college, and just educate them on the materials that you can get. Like, what's the coursework they need? We have fact sheets on those, and I understand that the YCC fact sheet, it's not all that well developed, and I think they're working on redoing that right now. But I think at least giving that moment, they ask the question, take that moment and just do a little session on what are the things they need to pay attention to as they're preparing for college. It takes time, but.
I have a comment as well. We're going to be working on redoing our careers brochure, and I'm going to take into consideration the comment that you made, okay?
Just one last piece of that puzzle, though, that I'll add. You've got the greatest transfer of knowledge getting ready to occur as that out-migration of baby boomers leaves the organization. That generation, my generation, is the most sensitive to issues of volunteerism that has ever existed. That resource needs to be tapped in this issue. They are the mentors for that group, and they are the constituency that we need to assign one-on-one to engage, because they know the issue, they know the resource. Give them the skills to be those mentors, coaches, and counselors. They can be a real ally within this process. And where intergenerational mentoring programs have been set up, they've been able to address this issue very competently. Why not have my retirees that are in with Evan Hirsch and the Refuge Association and other groups like this be allies for us in this effort?
Great. Another question up here, Joe?
Scott Simmons, Clarks River National Wildlife Refuge in Kentucky. Flip, first off, I knew I liked you. We have Marine Corps in common, and then I'm looking for a name for my unborn child, and I like Flip. So I had to write down
There's some other baggage with that now, okay?
I had to write
We'll talk
down.
about that off record.
That'd be good. I had to write down a couple things. For example, we've done a lot of SCAs wherever I've been with natural resources. The region I just came from until a few years ago had never heard of SCA, so I agree the partners, and they're doing it now, but I agree the partnerships, it's bigger than just this agency for sure. Also, our refuge, and I hear so many success stories of, for instance, when I read this, I think so many are doing the youth engaging and the reaching the diverse audiences, but the problem I see is that I could go back to those schools or those teachers all over, and to them, I'm still a game warden. I can't stop the gas station from giving me coffee for free because they still think I'm a game warden. So, I just came from a place where the skep that was just hired said they loathed waterfowl, and yet it was primarily a waterfowl refuge. And this person had been hired through the skep program. And we all have our bad apple stories, I understand that. So I think we've got to be able to acquire the qualified and the diversification that are enthusiastic rather than focusing so much on the diversity goal or measurement. I just want to make sure that it's a quality diversity goal. And then finally, I think the avenues are there, and I think we missed a boat. I think it's part of actually implementing strategically what we are already doing with how to do that. And for instance, take LCCs, for instance, if in fact the habitat conservation was such a deal to us, the opportunity for LCCs has always existed, and we finally, collaboratively with other agencies, are now doing something about it in the form of LCCs with the resources. Until we somehow, I think that opportunity exists. I won't call it an LCC for youth engagement, but it's the same concept to get involved with other agencies and the resources and stuff you talk about. And I feel like we talk about it all day long, and this is nothing new. We're just not doing it. That's it.
Any comment from that?
I would say we do need to make sure when we bring folks in that we're getting folks that are trained and ready to do the job. Now, on the other hand, we have folks who come in, it doesn't matter who they are really, who come in, and they don't have specific training on, maybe it's waterfowl in this case. I think when we bring those folks in, we need to do good by them by putting them with a senior level biologist, and you train them up first. You train them up before you give them their own station to get out and start running. And maybe that's the case here, I don't know. But that's something we have to really pay attention to, make sure we train them. If they don't have the specific experience that we need, we train them up. We provide the opportunity to get their training so that they're ready to run. It's the only thing I would add to it.
The other side of this issue is also how we engage them in terms of passing on the knowledge that they need to even be qualified to enter in so that they're competent within the process. And I don't know how many times, and I'm on hundreds of campuses within the course of a cycle, and a student does not know what courses they need to take to work for you. They don't know that answer to that question. It is shocking that they can't get that information easily, and they've been challenged in terms of knowing. I'm thinking of one student right now who basically added a full year to their matriculation to go back and get the requisite courses to qualify to be able to work for the organization. So that informational piece that we need to have needs to be easily accessible, and that will give. And that notion of the qualitative side of who those folks are coming in, the program that Lamar has set up, and it's not just within partnership with SCA, talks about that as a key, preeminent element. There should never be a question that they're not equally as qualified because they have had the same rigor that everyone else has gone through in terms of getting to that portal when they do reach the opportunity to be a part of a model such as Region 5s and 4s and 3s is going through now, or even other elements within our programs.
And that's our failure.
Okay, I see several questions across the back. Let's do it this way. Let's start over this way. We'll run across. There's about 4 of you. How about back there in the yellow shirt? And we'll pass the mic to you. And then I see everybody else. We'll run across the room there.
Jeremy Strickland, wildlife biologist, Upper Mississippi River Refuge, and I work out of the Savannah District. In regards to the different programs like the CDIP program, in which Region 5 has, in which we know those programs that work, what are the chances of adopting those programs across other regions so that we can build on some of the successes of those programs? That's one question. And then a follow-up to that is our refuge. We have partnerships with various universities, and those universities partner with high schools. One of the programs is called the Turtle Camp Research, Education, and Ecology Program, in which we partner with universities such as Iowa State University, and then they partner with urban high schools to recruit high school students to come out on the refuge, and it's a 2-week intensive field internship. These students design research projects, and then there's reciprocal mentoring opportunities in which these high school students are mentored by undergraduates, and then those undergraduates are mentored by graduate students, and then those graduate students are mentored by postdoctorals as well as principal investigators. But we've been fortunate to receive funding from like the Ecological Society of America and the National Science Foundation. But that program has been a success for 4 years, and they haven't promised us funding for the next years, but we're tracking those students who've come through that program over the years, and they are going on to pursue undergraduate degrees and graduate degrees as well. But I'd hate to see a program like that, you know, just be lost in the pipeline due to funding cuts, as you all are aware of. But, you know, we're looking for ideas to tap into other financial resources. So there's kind of 2 questions, but the reciprocal mentoring aspect, I think, and the lack of exposure coming from Chicago, I mean, we just don't know about all the opportunities and resources that are available on refuges. And I think that that's the way to building a diverse population in order to help the Fish and Wildlife further carry out its mission.
Kevin, Lamar, is that one for you guys?
Well, I'm sorry, but I didn't catch the name of the program. I caught the details, but is there an actual name for this
Yeah,
program?
you can just Google the Turtle Camp Research and Education and Ecology Program, or you just Google Turtle Camp, and it'll come up. And Fred Jansen was the principal investigator, and he was kind of the guy who took my hand and helped me write the grant. And we received that in 2007, and it's been going on ever since then. But they can't promise us funding for the next year, but we're tracking the students and compiling the results, and we're going to be submitting those findings to peer-reviewed journals. But they haven't promised us funding for next year, but we've indicated and shown that it has been a success.
Sounds like a great program. Thank you.
I'll answer the CDIP question. The program has been expanding, actually, and your region is running it as well. He's in your region, right? Yeah. So Region 3, Region 4, Region 5, and next year, Region 7 is planning on running the program, and I believe, I need to check the email, though, that Region 2 is on the hit list as well. But I want to make one thing clear, that, I mean, this is just one of the types of programs that can work. There's a lot of ways to do this. I think there are components that are important to the program. One is the mentoring. 2 is preparing the station for receiving and working with students that come from these different backgrounds, and evaluating the programs to look at your success. Those things are really important. It's not our program that makes it successful. CDIP is not it. It's the students that come through, it's the mentors that are working with them, and it's the project leaders and their staffs out in the field. It's just making sure that you have those successful components embedded in the field.
How about back there in the brown shirt? You've had your hand
Well,
up.
I just wanted to add one comment to the J.
Go ahead.
really the way this program has evolved, credit to Jay and other NCTC for stepping up and helping with the training, and that's made a big difference I can see in this last year, and it's really been very helpful, so thanks for your leadership with that, Jay.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Danny?
Denny Holland. I'm a retiree. I've been around this organization for 72 years. There's nothing like it in the world. Absolutely. We need you to help us, retirees. I have 2,700 names and addresses of retirees. There's probably someone near your station that's retired. Many of them are available and are interested in helping, in reaching out, reaching the kids in school, in elementary school, in high school, and in college. Flip, I'd like to thank you and your organization. I was the first station to get, for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, SCAs started. We couldn't do it because we did not have the authorization to accept volunteer services. That didn't occur until the Fish and Wildlife National Foundation was established, and Bob Gilmore got it tagged into that legislation. And we've been using them at Chincoteague ever since then. If we have a responsibility as retirees and as employees to work with the younger group, if you need a name or any assistance, please, for heaven's sakes, contact me. We're working with the Heritage Committee and NCTC. I don't know if I'm a stepchild of NCTC or not, but Jay and Mark and Steve Chase give us a lot of support. And we want, in turn, want to give back to the future of our organization. By the way, all of you are retirees in training. You work towards that. Work hard now. We need good ones. Thank you.
All right. Who do we have? Marilyn? Yeah. Did you?
My name is Marilyn Kitchell. I'm wildlife biologist at Wallkill River National Wildlife Refuge in New Jersey. And I have a thought in response to the diverse audiences question and the what do we need to do next question, which has to do with making the best use of our bilingual and multilingual staff. I don't see that we're doing that, either in advertising that we have staff on our staff listings on our websites, advertising, I also speak Spanish, or, I also speak Italian, or whatever the case may be, depending on the community that you're in, what may be the most relevant. I don't know that we look for it when we're recruiting people specific to the communities that the refuges are in. And when we, opportunistically have people on our staffs that have multilingual skills, I don't know that we're imparting them with the impression that, we would really like them to step up and make use of that, even if it makes them step outside the role of their traditional job description. And if we don't have anybody on our staffs that is multilingual, especially in communities where that's especially relevant, is there something that we can do to recruit volunteers within those communities to help assist us in what we're doing to reach these, other communities? And if we get those volunteers on our refuges, is that a way that we can then reach out to those diverse audiences and bring people in and have them see people that look like them and that talk like them and that have the same cultural experiences that they have? And would that help us to reach more? So it's just a thought. I know we've been talking a lot about cultural diversity and demographics today, and not so much about the multi-language, but I think that that's an equally important part of what we do, and they are tied together in a couple different ways. So I don't want to hold up much time, and I know there are other people that want to have comments, so I just leave it at that.
Good comment. Thoughts on that?
If there is a requirement that you need someone with a bilingual skill, you can advertise the position with that requirement. It would need to be documented in the position description, but, yeah, and it could be a screen out. Or you can, if there's a desire to have it, I mean, you can still evaluate candidates to see what their proficiency level, you don't have to screen them out, but maybe those individuals with that skill, they could be your best qualified candidates. So you want to talk to your HR office about the need, if they're, have them assess if there's a need for it, and if so, they can include it in the position description, which will allow you to advertise the position and request that skill.
Okay.
Another approach to this is to also use, as was suggested, I think, the volunteer ranks. I think there are a couple of state park and refuge systems that use volunteers as the language bridge to community and to especially the interpretive visitor services program models. I'm specifically familiar, having been a Parkie, with what's called the teacher arranger teacher program model that the National Park Service uses, and many of those that serve in that role are specifically recruited because of bilingual capacity, and that they are community and civically engaged as partners and through the volunteer ranks. And they are in the schools, but they also are servicing at the workstation. And then finally, the not-for-profit partners. I'll give a good example. Every year, we train a cohort of Japanese students from a university, and we bring them into the U.S. as international as one component of our program, and then they work in parks in the West because of the high visitation for Japanese visitors and the lack of that skill set within that resource. And they are the communicators for that increased visitation during the summer visitation season, and it works great. It is really a successful model.
Ricky.
Ricky Ingram, Refuge Supervisor in Atlanta, Georgia. Been involved in SCEP, STEP, and mentoring for several years on a regional basis. I think an observation I have is we're talking about recruiting here, which is 50% of the problem, and if you don't address the other 50% of the problem, recruiting will not solve the problem. Recruiting into what? I think if you go back to promises, there was less than 25 GS9 and below 485 jobs in the nation. That's less than 1 per state. It's probably a little better now. And other series, biologist outreach and all, it probably is no better. We're looking at declining budgets the next 2 years. So leadership's challenge is going to be how to provide dedicated funding to initial youth-type hires. And the Secretary put money for temps, for steps, and that's a great program, but that's not permanent positions. So unless there is some money for dedicated youth-type entry-level positions, you can recruit all you want to, you won't have anything to recruit them into. That's a key thing. And then declining budgets is going to be a greater challenge. So there's two issues here. And leadership is going to have to address those issues.
Excellent.
Yeah. Keep in mind that you do have employees that are retiring, you have individuals that are leaving, so don't just think new positions, think about your turnover as well. Okay.
That's another challenge we have.
Sure.
One other thing, and it is a serious leadership question, and in our region, and I don't know if the other regions have taken a look at this, we've been asked by the regional director to make any positions that have come vacant multi-graded positions, so that they're 579s or 7911 positions. And you're starting out low and you're training folks up so that we can create movement for some of those students coming out. That's what we've been doing in our region. And it's a hard decision because we want people, we're passionate about what we do. We want people to hit the ground and we want them to start running. We don't want to have to train them. but I think one of the things we have to think about is strategic planning for the future as folks are leaving. We probably do need to bring in more of these multi-graded positions as folks are leaving our stations. I think that may be one of the solutions, not the solution, but one of them.
Okay, it's a couple minutes to 5. We'll do one more question, but then we'll encourage folks to come up and talk with the panel afterwards, especially if you've got, questions that are specific to individuals. So, Jerome, you got the last word.
Yeah, Kate stole the microphone.
She did, or he did.
I raised my hand for the question with Jerome and this young man.
I seen the mic. It's just like bouncing back and forth. There's a buzz.
We just sort of bounced this here.
All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kate. I'm actually the intern who works with Jerome. I work with Rowan down at the director's office. I'd like to really commend the panel and everyone here for really taking the initiative to engage our youth. I really appreciate it as a student and someone who's now working for the service. I have a couple of questions. A lot of the comments that were sort of addressed, really touch on a couple of issues that the youth are really conscious about, and I'd just like to sort of go over them. The first is that when I was in high school, I used to ask my teacher, I was an undergraduate in science, I said, what do I do with my science degree? Where do I go with this? And the answer that I got was, well, you can be a scientist or you can be a teacher. That was kind of an interesting answer. So then I went, to my undergraduate sort of thing. And I was an environmental scientist undergrad, so I was going through the whole program, the various programs that everyone promotes, biology, ecology, et cetera, et cetera. And I asked at the end of that, I said, well, what do I do with my undergraduate in environmental science? He said, well, you can work for the private sector, work for the government. You got this big G, the government. That's just a sort of a broad sweep of everything. I said, oh, that's interesting too. So, you go out there with your undergraduate degree and you try to apply for the government and you don't really find a whole lot. So what do? We go to grad school. So I went to Vermont law sort of thing, and here I am at grad school trying to figure out, well, what is the government? And now you learn about the agencies and the departments and everything else and the EPA. And so then you ask the same question, well, where do I work now? And everyone says, oh, gosh, I don't know. You can work for the EPA. That seems like it could be, it's got environment in it, so that seems like a good place to start. Nobody knows about the Fish and Wildlife Service. Nobody knows about Interior for my generation, for the most part. And I'm sorry, but that is the truth. And it's interesting, I was walking around sort of thing, and, Jerome has been really helpful to me. It just introduced me to people. But my question is, how many people in the room here have actually talked to anyone my age here at this conference? I actually sat down and talked to somebody. We have a couple of hands. See, we have some hands popping up here. But, realistically, this room is not even, 1/20th of the number of people that have been at this conference. And it's surprising to me how many young people I see walking around that just kind of flitter around these conversations of all the backpatting and everything else. Like, oh, this is my friend. I've known him for 30 years. I've known Jerome for about a month. That's about all I got to my name in terms of who I know in this organization. Exactly, and it's tough. It's really hard for us to get to know you guys because we're intimidated because you have so much experience. You have to go and talk to us and pull us on the side and say, hey, there's this person who's flittering around who looks like they could be under 30. And I'm not going to try to age myself, but that happens a lot. We really do want to talk to you guys, and that's why we're here. We didn't fly out to Madison to enjoy the scenery, believe it or not.
I got to say something.
So the other thing that was addressed is this whole funding issue. That's a big thing. And there's actually another flip side to it where you got to bring people in and have the funding to keep them in there. We need to be paid. And that's something that really gets surprising because the thing is that we have these huge outstanding student loans. And when it comes down to, we talk to our teachers and stuff like that, everyone complains that when they work for the states, they work for the government, and being paid enough that you can pay off your student loans is a big deal to us. It's scary when you go in there and you start looking at your budget and think, how am I going to do this? Can I do this with this job? And if you can assure us that we can do this, we are going to pay a lot more attention. And we're not going to apply to Google or something like that. So, the last thing I would like to sum up with, is this issue of talent and compatibility. I went to Vermont Law School to learn about policy and environmental law. And I went, in my undergraduate, I did a science degree. But a lot of my peers at Vermont Law did political science undergrads, they might have done economics, they might have done business degrees. They aren't biologists by training, but they care about the environment. That's why they went to Vermont Law. And they're talented. These are good kids that would give their left arm right now to work for the service, that have gone to grad school and are knocking at doors trying to get in, and they can't because they're not ecologists. And they're talented. So my question to you is, and I challenge the staff and the panel to think about this, what do you want? Do you want talent or do you want immediate compatibility? Because I tell you, you give me a 300-page book to read on herbology and give me a month to read it, I will know it. And I will get it back to you and be able to practice this. Not as in the same ability as people who've been doing this on the ground, but I can at least begin to understand these issues. So I just like to challenge everyone to think about that, and I hope that, some of our youth will stand up and really, bring that to the table. Thank you.
Well, before... Well, I say you're right on target, and I'm going to respond when we want you. So you can be taken. So I just, before any of the youth leave the room, I just want to toss out a website that you can go to. Youthgo.gov is a new website that the Department of Interior put out there, and it lists a lot of the youth jobs in the government. But on another note, and Flip may be going into this in a second, we get a look at youth that are hired through SCA every year, and we evaluate those youth, and you get your foot in the door by getting on one of those evaluations. Evaluation comes in, you're highly rated, and you get evaluated for coming into the SCEP program, or whatever our youth program is going to be next year, which is the Youth Pathways. So that's a way in, and you don't go through all of the government hiring process on that initial year, but your foot is in. People know you, and you show your stuff. And I want talent. I think every manager in this room, every administrator in this room, they want talent. I mean, yeah, we also would like to have the quick fix, but ultimately, I really just want talent. I want somebody who's willing to come on, and they're passionate, and they have the talent to pick up what I'm going to need them to pick up. That's what I want.
I just want to quickly respond to one of your key points, because I think it is very important for the leaders who are in this room on this issue of relevancy. It is at the heart and the core of our ability to engage this young, diverse populace that we're seeking. And we really need to be the servers up of that issue of relevancy within their world. And the one thing that we've got to learn in that equation is not having it come from our perspective. We started in the wrong place. We're trying to sell it from here when we need to really sell it from their vantage point. And that issue of relevancy as a key part of getting that word out about who we are and what we value and what's important to us can be multiplied in terms of that messaging that can go out on a campus. And I've seen campuses embrace governmental organizations. And sometimes on some campuses, that's tough to do. But I know that the models can be done, and if it's done even in a targeted way. You have this great network of what they call CESUs, Cooperative Ecological Study Units. There are 200 of them that are the research institutions that work with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and 14 other federal agencies that are the prime resources. There is a council of environmental deans and natural resource deans that is a conduit to that populace in terms of relevance, but they need to be armed with the relevancy about the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's an important part. Thank you.
Thanks. There's one more question out there, I think, that's burning. It's a short one, right? I know it. That's right.
We can hear you.
Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge, just a very quick observation. There's a question about who we want to hire, and that's very, very important. But my observation is that how we hire, the hiring process, kind of the business practice of hiring, in my opinion, we are very, very poor at it. It's really broken, with the notable exception of things like STEP and SCEP. But the USA Jobs OPM cert process, I don't have time to go into details, but it's really poor. It shouldn't take 6-9 months to hire somebody.
You didn't hear my comment? Yeah, yes, federal agencies are being monitored on their hiring process. We had to establish a hiring timeline, and for the service, it's 95 days that we have to get individuals hired. So we are working on improving that because we know it is a problem, okay? And one other comment, I'll talk to you, I'll talk to anybody. I'm gonna be at the Youth Go booth after the general session tomorrow and Thursday. I have some handouts about how to apply for federal jobs, how to write a resume. Any questions that you have, I'll be sitting out there after the general session for anyone who wants to stop by.
All right, let me,
in my opinion, any of those questions. So I would encourage people to have any kind of ideas about what we do about those questions. To send those questions in. Once again, we haven't done an adequate job of addressing those issues. So I would just encourage people to send those questions.
Or any other comment.
okay, and I'm going to repeat that just because we're taping it, but the comment was, we have these questions up on the screen. It was to provoke thought. It did, but we didn't delve into those individual questions. If everybody would take those and think about them, and in closing, I'll say, here's the challenge. How do we operationalize this change in the refuge system and the service? We're here visioning. You're going into workshops that it's going to talk about implementation. Think about those questions. Think about what we've talked about here. Challenge yourselves out there as you're working on the vision to figuring out solutions to the questions that we've asked today. And I think this common understanding that we all have about where we need to go. So that's actually probably a not bad closing for the day. I want to thank everybody for coming out. It's great to see as many people as there are here. And the panelists will stay here. If you've got questions, please come on up and have a great afternoon. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You wanna come down? I'll come down. I'm gonna come down.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate it. Ryan, it's good to put a face. Let's keep it.